Dark Souls 2 is overhated. I've been playing From Software's Souls games for the past 5 years now. I've beaten all of these games and I've seen so many people hail these games as some of the greatest games ever designed, calling From Software the kings of the AAA gaming scene. But only one of these games doesn't get that type of glaze, and that is Dark Souls 2. You can usually call any of these games a masterpiece and glaze them, and that will be probably okay, but when you try to do that for Dark Souls 2, it will feel more like you're defending the game, because there is so much hate and negativity surrounding this game that it's actually insane. Some of the hate is understandable, but a lot of it is pure BS because people will call things that are usually fine in other Souls games bad in Dark Souls 2. There are so many hypocritical takes calling Dark Souls 2 an objectively bad game. And some of the reasons for this are because the game wasn't designed by the main From Software team. No, it was designed by From Software Team 2, without Miyazaki, and this led to this game being more experimental than any of the other Souls games, with the game introducing many weird mechanics that just didn't sit right with some people. And I used to be a Dark Souls 2 hater too. I was just hating on the game for the sake of hating on the game, because I guess it was cool to hate on Dark Souls 2 at that time. But I decided to give a game another chance right now. I decided to replay the game fully and its DLCs that I won't be talking about in this video, since I do believe that Dark Souls 2's DLCs deserve their own video, and I actually formed my opinion on this game instead of being brainwashed by Dark Souls 2 hate videos on YouTube. And today in this video, I'll take a look at this game's combat, level design, atmosphere and bosses, and I'll point out what I like and dislike about these aspects of the game, while also taking a look at what made some parts of this game so hated. Even though this is a Dark Souls 2 defense video, I'm not going to just blindly glaze the game, say that everything is perfect in it, because I personally don't believe that. If I said that, I would be lying. I still have lots of problems with this game, but I just ended up really enjoying it at the end. And I'll start this video off the same way I'd start any Souls game review, and that is by talking about this game's combat. Dark Souls 2's combat is weird, because at the start of the game I really didn't like it. I thought it was too slow and sluggish. However, the more I played the game, the more I started appreciating the combat, and now I actually feel like the combat system of this game is pretty good now that I understand it. Because I'll say that Dark Souls 2's combat requires the most patience out of any Souls game. And yes, this is including Elden Ring. Because you see, Elden Ring's patience revolves around you waiting for the boss to stop attacking so you can find one tiny window where you can hit the boss and do some damage. However, in Dark Souls 2 there are many openings when you are fighting the boss. So where does this requirement for patience come from? Well, it's actually because of the stamina management of Dark Souls 2. You can only hit the enemy a couple of times before your stamina runs out, so a lot of the gameplay of Dark Souls 2 is hitting the enemy a few times and then backing away or saving enough stamina for a dodge. If you do end up attacking many times in a row, you will get punished by a boss's combo. Another thing about this game's combat is that sometimes you won't actually need to dodge in this game. Some enemy attacks can be avoided just by walking to the right or walking to the left. While this is apparent at the start of the game, if you try using this trick on some of the later game bosses, you will get punished severely, so use it while you can. And don't just spam the roll button, because if you do like you do in Dark Souls 3, your stamina bar will get completely wasted, so you actually need to be conservative when you are fighting enemies. However, my biggest problem with this game's combat is ADP, or I should just say adaptability. Adaptability is a stat you can upgrade, and by upgrading it, it boosts your iframes, which is in my opinion a stupid concept. Even though you do get the most souls in Dark Souls 2 compared to any other Souls game, it's still stupid to basically be forced to put some of your souls into ADP, because it doesn't feel like a real stat. It feels like something you just need to upgrade for the sake of upgrading. I personally prefer where everyone's dodge roll is at the same level, like it is in every other single Souls game. This stat just overcomplicates something as simple as pressing circle, and that is why I dislike it. Now let's get back to the positives of this game's gameplay, and one of those positives is that the positioning actually matters in this game. The more we go through Souls games, the more new Souls games come out, the less and less positioning matters. However, in Dark Souls 2, it absolutely matters. I like how you just don't need to spam circle to defend yourself, and you actually need to do more and think outside of the box, and you actually have to plan where your character has to stand in the boss arena or in any place where you are encountered with enemies. Okay, now it's time to talk about one of the more controversial topics about Dark Souls 2, and those are the hitboxes in this game. Now, if you've ever seen a Dark Souls 2 video, you'd probably assume that the hitboxes are just super awful in this game. Well, in my experience, I just didn't have that much problems with this game's hitboxes. They just felt actually the same as in any other Souls game. And also, why are we acting like Dark Souls 1 didn't have that many bad hitboxes when it arguably had even worse hitboxes than Dark Souls 2? Same thing with Dark Souls 3. Some of the hitboxes in that game were also pretty bad. Every Souls game is going to have some type of janky hitboxes. I just don't understand why Dark Souls 2 gets so much hate for the hitboxes. I think I only got fucked up by the hitboxes maybe like 2 times in this game, but it wasn't something that shocking. It was just like some enemy grabbing me when I was just re-exploring the areas for the video. I actually didn't experience that much of the boss's hitboxes, just like I didn't in the other Souls games. And this might look like I'm just trying to get the Souls games down just so I can, put a shining light on Dark Souls 2 to say Dark Souls 2 is actually a good game, but no, the hitboxes have always been like this in Dark Souls. I never had a reason to complain about them because, well, yeah, some of them are janky. They never ended up being a big problem for me. And you know how I said that Dark Souls 2 is the most experimental Souls game? Well, yeah, because Dark Souls 2 added a lot of mechanics that ended up being revolutionary for this subgenre. Like for the example of weapons, it is power stancing or dual wielding 2 different weapons. It is really fun to use this, and especially wielding 2 big-ass giant greatswords or 2 katanas. This was later expanded in Elden Ring. However, I also really liked using it in Dark Souls 2. My only problem with power stancing in this game are the ridiculous stat requirements. But at the same time, the game makes up for it with the ridiculous damage numbers you can pull off in this game. Another gameplay mechanic Dark Souls 2 introduced, which revolves around the weapons, is gemstone infusion, letting you customize your weapon in ways you could have never done before, applying different types of damage to it and making your weapon even more unique. Another thing Dark Souls 2 introduced are Estus shards, which lets our character not immediately start with 10 flasks like in Dark Souls 1, and it removes our character's ability to need to grind for healing items like in Demon Souls and Bloodborne. There is a huge reason why this healing system is being used in every other single Souls game right now, and that is because it's the best one, and Dark Souls 2 introduced it. Oh yeah, and how can I forget that this game also introduced probably the most experimental gameplay mechanic in Souls history, and that is letting you respec your stats. This is currently mandatory in every single Souls game, so you can experiment with different builds and not just be stuck with one build for the rest of the game, which is something I actually do miss in Bloodborne. And there are also a lot of cool new mechanics that were added, like life gems, which was an added healing item you could use alongside your Estus flasks, but they were kind of a risk/reward item, since they healed you really slowly, and unless you were certain that you were going to dodge every single move, you would probably die because you wouldn't regenerate your HP fast enough. This game also introduced bonfire aesthetics, a fucking perfect mechanic that I miss in every single Souls game. It's a mechanic that lets you respawn all of the enemies in an area, including a boss, and this lets you grind so much. And the catch is, the more you respawn the enemies, the stronger they get. You basically give these enemies New Game Plus difficulty, and the more you use these on a single bonfire, you get New Game Plus 1 difficulty, then New Game Plus 2 difficulty, then New Game Plus 3 difficulty, and so on. I just had so much fun experimenting with this item and I absolutely loved it. Most of my time in Dark Souls 2 is spent because of this item. It is just so fun to use and replay all of the fun bosses in this game. And then there are Pharaoh's Lockstones, which are a really cool mechanic that was brought back in Elden Ring. Another mechanic that's uniquely tied to Dark Souls 2 are the fragment branches of yore, which while I do like the concept, I actually kind of dislike when a statue is blocking your way and it's actually pretty easy for your character to just squeeze through it. But even though it is immersion breaking, I would like to see this item return in some other Souls game, because it could actually be great if used properly. However, while I do like a lot of these mechanics that were added to Dark Souls 2, there's also quite a few shit ones, like halving your health, which is absolutely stupid and I hated it in Demon Souls and I hate it now. I hate how we need to use all of our humanities basically to get our health back up. And I also really dislike illusory walls in this game, or I should say illusory doors, because unlike in Dark Souls 1 where you just need to hit a wall and then a magical pathway will open, in Dark Souls 2 you need to go and spam X like you're in a Silent Hill 2 level checking for locked doors on every single wall in Dark Souls 2 until you find one that magically opens. Okay, so now that I have tackled the gameplay mechanics and combat of Dark Souls 2, it's probably time to talk about the most controversial part of the game, and that is the level and world design. And even though a lot of people don't like it, I'm here to defend it because I think these two factors of Dark Souls 2 are extremely good, especially the world design, which I believe is absolutely amazing, especially at the start of the game. When you enter Majula, you have many different areas you can explore. It's not linear like Dark Souls 3. If you get stuck on one boss, for example the Pursuer, you can just go to another location and level up, beating easier bosses. What's that? You got stuck on the Tree Sentinels? Well, you can just skip them by going to another location, defeating the Dragon Rider and that weird ass knight at the boat. What's that? You've beaten the Pursuer and you feel like the next area is too annoying? Well, now you can go to this cat and you can buy this ring that lets you explore a completely different location. I just absolutely love how much freedom the devs give to the player in Dark Souls 2, and this is just not talked about enough, because this is so much fun. I absolutely love starting a new playthrough of Dark Souls 2 and just going through this first part of the game. And just like in Dark Souls 1, this game also has 4 bosses that contain special souls, and these bosses guard 4 locations on the map. Once you defeat these bosses, you gain access to a very lore important location, and that location of course is the Drain Lake Castle. Now, the areas after Vendrick's Castle don't give you as much freedom as the starting areas, but that's okay since at this point you're pretty close to the end of the game, and you're probably just going to spend the rest of the time going through the DLCs. So overall, I have no real complaints about the world design. I just absolutely love it in this game, and I feel like it should be talked about more when discussing Dark Souls 2. Now, the thing that's truly controversial about this game isn't really the world design, but rather the level design of the locations you visit. If you've never played Dark Souls 2, you probably heard stories of the Iron Keep, and people talking about its horrible enemy placement. Because of the hate surrounding this game's level design, I decided to revisit these levels. And after going through these levels another time, I can confidently say that 95% of the criticism is pure bullshit. Except for the Iron Keep. Iron Keep still fucking sucks, it can suck my dick. Now, the first thing people say is bad about Dark Souls 2's areas is the fact that there is a lot of enemies in these areas and the game just spams you with enemies, just trying to make the game hard with pointless ganks. Except that this is a fucking lie. If you kill the enemies patiently one by one and not just running past them like in Dark Souls 2, this won't be a problem. People have just gotten so used to running past enemies and then getting iframes from door animations that Dark Souls 2 gets criticized for forcing you to actually, engage with the levels and actually take a look at your surroundings instead of running around aimlessly and finding something that's interactable. Dark Souls 3 basically encourages this playstyle, however in Dark Souls 2 you get punished for it, because your iframes are delayed in this game, when opening doors, opening chests, pulling levers, and going through fog gates. You actually need to engage with the area, and Dark Souls 2 gets called a bad game for this. You need to observe your surroundings, find creative shortcuts, use the torch to ward away spiders, use the environment to your advantage. Or sometimes you'll find ways you can make the area easier by getting rid of the poison in the poisonous tower. People also like to criticize the gang traps in this game, but do they actually forget that gang traps have been a staple of the Souls series for years, until Bloodborne changed that, and even in Dark Souls 3 there are still a lot of gang traps, except no one criticizes those because you're 10 times faster than the enemies and you can just run past them. I mean, if you really thought that FromSoft will let you get this free item on top of this fuck-ass sword just like that, if you picked up this item and expected nothing to happen, then you officially have the survival instincts of a retarded panda. Now, there are two areas specifically that get criticized the most in Dark Souls 2, and those are the Iron Keep, which you guys know my opinion on, and another location called the Shrine of Omana, which actually isn't even that fucking bad. Actually, I will say it's not bad at all. If you just kill the enemies one by one, and you actually, talked to the NPCs, then you would understand that this area is actually really easy. Oh yeah, and by the way, killing enemies in this area rewards you with fucking twinkling titanite. So overall, I actually think that the Dark Souls 2 level design is really good. And a lot of people who say that the level design of this game is objectively bad are either bad at the game or they just refuse to actually play the game, and they refuse to actually interact with the levels. Now, as for the atmosphere of this world and these levels, this is something I'm actually really torn on, because on one hand, some of the areas look amazing and give me weird vibes, and the environmental storytelling in this game is just absolutely amazing. The Huntsman Copse, No Man's Wharf, The Lost Bastille, Earthen Peak all have such a unique vibe and feel to it. Even the first area in the game, the Forest of Fallen Giants, has just such a great atmosphere because it truly feels like you are exploring a place with a deep and disturbing history of war, with the enemies being just soldiers who have completely lost their mind and gone hollow. The Lost Bastille is also one amazing area to me, because it just feels like you're cut off from the world completely in this weird Bastille in the middle of the ocean, and the vibes of this area are unlike anything I've ever seen. However, unfortunately, while I do like a lot of the areas in this game, some areas just feel very boring to me, like the Iron Keep just feels like another lava level, with the samurais that don't even look cool or appealing to me, but that's just my opinion. And the same turtle-backed enemies from the start of the game appear here too, so it doesn't feel like the devs tried to make this area unique. Same thing with the Dragon's Area, or same thing with the Dragon's Area, or however the fuck that's pronounced. It just feels like a bland dragon location, with boring enemy designs. And there are also areas like Hades Tower of Flame, and even though it looks beautiful on the surface, it just gets more boring and boring the more you explore. And the final boss of that area just really sucks, and it just ruins the atmosphere and the whole vibe of that area for me. However, while I was underwhelmed by some of the areas in this game, I'd still say that the lore of King Duendric and his war against the giants being manipulated by his queen adds a lot to this game's atmosphere. It makes you feel like you're exploring locations with lots of history behind them, and I actually really like the world building in this game. It's truly a beautiful world from Software Team 2 created, and I love how they didn't rely on fan service from the first game, like a certain other Souls game. Now this is the part you've probably all been waiting for, and those are my thoughts on the bosses and boss design of this game. Well, some of the bosses in this game are very creative and well thought out, but some of them are in my opinion just garbage. This game is no Dark Souls 3 with boss quality, but I will give it its flowers. Let's start with the tutorial boss, which is great at teaching you the combat of the game, teaching you that you need to be patient against him so he doesn't stomp you, and if you attack too much, you'll get punished, so you need to manage your stamina. And these mechanics will be important for every boss in this game. So yeah, I actually really like The Last Giant. And this game also has a lot of cool bosses. Like some of my favorites are the Pursuer, which is a fun boss with a badass design, and you can use the environment to your advantage again, actually using the Ballista. The Looking Glass Knight is a knight with a very cool moveset and very cool attacks. Yeah, he just looks cool, and you can't really attack the side of him that has the shield. And I also really like how he can summon other players to fight against you. The Last Sinner is also a really fun fight, especially with the gimmick that you fight in the dark and you can make the fight easier by lighting the room up using your torch. Wellstat is probably my second favorite main game boss in Dark Souls 2, and I actually really do like him and his design. I also really like his lore and his connection to the Fume Knight. The Ruined Sentinels are also a really fun boss fight. It's a gank fight done well, and the game gives you enough time to kill the Sentinels one by one. The Smelter Demon is also a pretty good boss fight, except that I do feel like his moveset is really basic. And my favorite boss in this game is of course the Dark Lurker. I think that he is just such a phenomenal boss fight. I love everything from his design to his moveset to his ability to clone himself. He's just such an amazing boss, and I wish he didn't have that bad of a run back. However, I will praise the quest you need to go on just to fight him, because I thought it was actually really cool, going through all of these trials of the Dark Covenant just so you can fight him. Even some of the forgettable bosses in this game had unique gimmicks, like the Executioner's Chariot, the Flexile Century, the Skeleton Lords, and Mipha the Baneful Queen, which are all also pretty decent boss fights. Now, this is just looking at some of the bosses I actually liked. Don't forget, this game still has a lot of shit bosses, like the Ancient fucking Dragon, complete and utter ass and disgrace of a boss fight. You have two ways of fighting him, and both ways are fucking repetitive and they suck the life out of you. Fuck this boss and whoever designed him. And his big ass health pool too. It just completely sucks, and his very slow attacks annoy the fuck out of me. And the second you learn the simple loop, you just do it over and over again until he's dead. The Royal Rat Vanguard is also a completely utterly useless boss. You literally just wait for the rat with a mohawk to spawn in, and then you kill it. However, I will praise the boss for one thing, and that's that it lets you think outside the box, and you can grab the Evil Eye Ring to make the boss easier, and so you can retrieve the health while killing all of the other rats. Now, another thing you've probably heard about Dark Souls 2 is that the runbacks for bosses are completely awful. And I actually disagree. I actually believe that a lot of the boss runbacks in this game were fair. Like the boss runback for the Rotten, the Old Iron King, the Royal Rat Vanguard, Wellstat. And yeah, I actually believe a lot of this game's boss runbacks aren't that bad. But why does this game have such a bad rap for boss runbacks? Well, while I do believe that a lot of the boss runbacks in this game are completely fine, especially for Souls standards, this game also has, two of the worst runbacks in Souls history that are just complete and fucking utter bullshit. Like the runback for the Smelter Demon, which is going to take hours. You'll basically need to kill every enemy so you can despawn them, and then you can run back to the boss. And that is just so dull. And yeah, just to get back on that topic, in Dark Souls 2, if you're having problems with the runback, you can kill the enemies multiple times and they will just stop respawning. That's another unique mechanic Dark Souls 2 added. And also another boss runback that completely sucks is the boss runback for the Dark Lurker. While I do absolutely love the Dark Lurker as a boss fight, and he's absolutely my favorite boss fight in the game, his runbacks are so tedious. all 3 of them. I actually do believe that the game would have been better if they just let you, directly teleport to him going through the Abyss portal. Something similar what Elden Ring did with the boss run back for Rykard. But no, that didn't exist, and now unfortunately the best boss in the game has the shittiest run back, which just really sucks. And also another runback that was controversial is the runback for the Ancient Dragon. And while it does seem annoying on paper, it really isn't, since once you kill the leader of these dragon people, or I should say Dragonborns, then they will just stop attacking you. They will basically be like Minecraft zombie pigmen, letting you walk up directly to the Ancient Dragon. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the boss runbacks. I really didn't have that big of an issue with them. Now, despite me praising the gameplay of these bosses, I can't praise the artistic design of them, because the bosses in this game don't look memorable or unique at all, especially compared to other From Software titles. The only ones that were memorable for me were the Pursuer, Velstad, King Vendrick, and the Dark Lurker. And I guess we can also say the Lost Sinner and the first boss of the game, which is the Giant. But other than that, what are the rest of the designs? They are just completely awful. The Ruined Sentinels, while I do actually think they are a competent gang fight, just look extremely generic. And it doesn't help that they just become regular enemies in Vendrick's castle. The Dragon Rider literally looks like an NPC. Scorpione Snaika is Quelaag off of Temu. Royal Rat Vanguard, I won't even say anything. The Rotten looks very generic in my opinion. He just looks like a low budget version of Nurgle from Warhammer, and compare him to Nito, it's not even close design wise. Nito blows him up the fucking water. The Guardian Dragon and Ancient Dragon are also completely disappointing designs for dragons. I mean, compare these guys to Black Dragon Calamite. Thankfully, the DLC fixes this by giving us Sin the Slumbering Dragon, which is a boss that had a really cool design. Oh yeah, also there are lots of other boss designs that were completely horrendous in my opinion. Like, for example, Throne Watcher and Throne Defender. They just look generic, and even though they do have some interesting lore behind them, I just didn't find any reason to care. And then there's Nashandra, which, I mean, just her design isn't even that bad, but for the final boss of the game, this is completely awful. Compare her to any of the other From Software final bosses. Even Murgo's Wet Nurse looked more interesting than this bitch. And I mean, it's just so unfortunate that the bosses in this game need to look this boring. I mean, Dark Souls 1 had some generic designs, but they worked, and they made sure that these bosses still felt memorable with unique gimmicks. I just don't feel that same type of way with Dark Souls 2, and I'm truly disappointed by that. But I still feel like a lot of the bosses are overhated in this game. And I do believe that they are actually really competent bosses. It just sucks that some of their designs need to look like this. Now, I don't want to leave this video on a negative note, because at the end of the day, while there are still things I dislike about Dark Souls 2, I really love this game. It feels like such a unique take on the Souls subgenre, and it can stand on its own as a truly unique experience, with unique combat, unique gameplay mechanics, unique level design, and a unique world, with some of my favorite lore in the entirety of the Souls series. And this is including Sekiro, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, Lies of P, basically any Souls game. If you're someone like me who played Dark Souls 2 one time and didn't really like it as much as the other games, I'd advise you to give this game another shot. And if you're someone who's never played this game before because of all the negativity surrounding it, then you should really try playing this game with an open mind, because it is really damn good and a one-of-a-kind game. Hello again guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more of my content, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm currently planning on making a Dark Souls 3 review or a Lies of P Overture review. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree with my takes on Dark Souls 2, and if you have any other video ideas that you would like to see from me, make sure to leave them in the comments. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
You never see it coming.